we've got breaking news. Watching the Syrian border where Turkey's military set to begin an impeding offensive. It is now underway. Turkish troops and hardware are gathering on Turkey's southern border. And this morning, a senior Turkish official says an assault is imminent against U.S. allies, the Kurds of Syria. Let's go straight to the Pentagon, where correspondent Courtney Kubi is standing by, and Matt Bradley in Iraq, miles from the border with Turkey and Syria. Courtney, this is happening now. What are you hearing?
So all we're hearing are very early and so far unconfirmed reports, but one of them is from the spokesperson for the Syrian Democratic Forces. This is the opposition force who the U.S. military has been fighting with for several years there in Syria. He's saying that Turkish warplanes have begun airstrikes. I've spoken with one person in the U.S. military in Baghdad who's confirming that they expect that they believe the airstrikes are just now beginning. So the question is, what does this mean and where does this go from here? If, in fact, it's confirmed these are Turkish military strikes into northern Syria. What we know is that the Turks want to clear out an area along the border with Turkey and Syria and create what they're calling a safe zone. They want basically a buffer zone because they believe that the Kurds, many of whom have settled in that area near the border, present a threat to Turkish national security. They see them as terrorists. Of course, from the U.S. perspective, particularly the U.S. military, these Kurds are the ones who the military has been fighting alongside against ISIS in Syria for several years now. And they've been really the strongest fighting force on the ground, the ones who are taking the casualties. They're still providing security for many of the U.S. military who are there in Syria today. So, it's putting the U.S. military in a very difficult position right now, where they're faced with a NATO ally who's coming in to go after someone who've been their brothers and sisters in arms in Syria for several years now. Steph.
Matt, what are you hearing where you are?
Well, Stephanie, one of the things that we're hearing is that there are Turks who are amassing at the border heavy weaponry, heavy airplanes that are going to be launching airstrikes. And as my colleague Courtney just said, those airstrikes may already be beginning as we speak. But one of the really interesting things that's going on here, Stephanie, is that the Turks are going to be taking Turkish-backed Syrian forces from elsewhere in Syria, bringing them across the border into Syria by bus and transporting them through Turkey and then kind of inserting them into northern Syria elsewhere. This will give kind of a local face to this move into Syria. So they won't be a foreign occupying force so much as trying to take Syrian Arabs from elsewhere in Syria and using them to try to say that, we're going to be putting Syrians back where they belong. And this will be maybe popular among Syrian Arabs who don't always have the best of relations with Syrian Kurds, and it's going to allow a pretext for the Turks to come in here and do exactly what Courtney was saying, creating this peace corridor and repopulating it. It looks almost like moving or like an ethnic cleansing, moving Kurds out of that area and putting Syrian Arabs in there instead. And they've done this before in Afrin in years past to devastating effect. And a lot of international organizations called it a humanitarian catastrophe. Now, the Kurds have said that they are going to fight. And one of the things they've been doing today is that they told NBC that they are now seeing this Turkish incursion as the priority, no longer fighting ISIS. So that's dangerous. That means that could leave a space for ISIS to regroup and start their own insurgency once again, to repopulate that caliphate that ended only just a couple months ago. And that's going to be a big problem, not only for Syrians, but for people here in Iraq, for Europeans, for everyone throughout the entire region. Stephanie?
Courtney, anything to add?
Yeah, so I'm hearing now it looks like there's the Turkish military has moved artillery along the border, and it looks like this is beginning of what the U.S. military might call some shaping operations. So basically that means that they'll try to send in airstrikes, artillery strikes across the border, and that sort of clears out the area prior to any kind of a ground incursion. So before they start bringing vehicles, troops, tanks, whatever it is across the border, they would begin with some strikes to try to clear out an area and make it safer for them. So the next thing that we should expect to see are artillery strikes across the border, perhaps some other kind of small arms, even mortars or whatnot, going across the border from Turkey into Syria. And we can see that coming. And I want to reinforce something that Matt just said about the SDF saying they're going to fight. I spoke with General Mazloum, who's the head of all the Syrian Democratic Forces, and he has said he's very disappointed in the U.S. decision to pull back from the border, but that the world should know that the SDF is going to fight, that they're not going to cede what they see as their land, their territory in northern Syria to Turkey, Steph.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.